Hello, I am Madam Gracious Kanzieni from Educare, Tanzania. Warmly welcome in our Best Media Educare TZ, so as we can proceed with our A-level tutorials. My students, here we have our simple and interest subject known as chemistry, and our class level is Form 5. So we are proceeding with inorganic chemistry, and we are discussing the second subtopic, which is all about the selected compound of metals. So my student, today we're going to look on each of the chemical properties of the metal oxide. But before, let us discuss about the thermal decomposition of metal carbonate. If you can remember, kwenye previous session tulikuwa tunaongelea kuhusiana na the issue of the indirect method of preparing the metal oxide. Tukaona kwamba hii indirect way ina involve the technique of the oxidation, but also the issue of the thermal decomposition of the compound containing oxygen. Tukaona kuhusiana na thermal decomposition ya compound mbalimbali, for instance the compound of the sulfate. Tukaona jinsi gani ambavyo the metal oxide can be prepared when the compound of sulfate is undergo the thermal decomposition. But also we have the issue or the case of the thermal decomposition of the metal carbonate. Maana kwamba we are talking about those metal carbonate compound. Sasa hizi metal carbonate compound ni compound ambazo pia zina oxygen ndani yake. Sasa this element they decompose thermal or under heat, and therefore obvious it leads to the formation of the metal oxide compound. For instance, anasema kwamba the carbonate of calcium, magnesium, zinc, iron, lead and copper, anasema kwamba decompose readily on heating to form the metal oxide, and carbon dioxide is shown in the following reaction. Kwamba this metal of carbonate, kwa mfano hizi zote calcium, magnesium, zinc, iron, lead but also and copper, zipo tayari kudecompose. They are readily decomposed on heating, and therefore we're going to prepare the metal oxide, but also we're going to lead the compound known as the carbon dioxide as the product. So this reaction can be observed here in the following reaction. Kama tulivyoona kule kwenye decomposition of the sulfate inavyotokea, the same here kwenye decomposition of metal carbonate. For instance, we have the calcium carbonate, we have the zinc carbonate, copper carbonate. Sasa anasema kwamba this compound are readily decomposed on heating, and therefore it gives the metal oxide compound. Kwa hiyo utaona kwamba mfano calcium carbonate it's decomposed on heating, na maana ina undergo thermal decomposition. Ukishaona tu heat hapa, maana kwamba it is the thermal decomposition reaction. Kwa hiyo obvious tunaenda kupata the metal oxide ambayo ni calcium oxide, but also we are going to release this carbon dioxide gas. The same applies zinc carbonate. It undergo the thermal decomposition. We're going to have the metal oxide, which is zinc oxide, as well as carbon dioxide gas. And finally, copper carbonate. It's decomposed readily on heating, or in undergo thermal decomposition, and therefore we're going to have the copper oxide and releasing the carbon dioxide gas. So my student, this is the indirect way which can be useful in the preparation of the metal oxide. But anasema kwamba the carbonate of the most reactive metals. So tunakuja kwenye ile expressionality. For instance, when we talk about those carbonates with the most reactive metals, mfano tuna sodium and potassium. The sodium and potassium, these are very stable, or the very reactive metals. Kwa hiyo ni very stable. So anasema kwamba, and therefore do not decompose on heating. So once we have the carbonate of potassium, the carbonate of this sodium, therefore we don't have the decomposition at all. Kwa hiyo ukipewa reaction kama hiyo, yamkini imekuja kama swali, then we are required to complete, this will be the answer. So the answer will be no decomposition or no reaction. Kwa maana kwamba tuna expect kwamba this is very stable. So the carbonate of the sodium, the carbonate of the potassium do not decompose on heating. Hata to the expose kwenye nini? Kwenye hiyo heat au kwenye hiyo thermal. no decomposition at all. Why? Because of the stability ambayo inakuwa created pale. Kumbuka mwanzoni tusema the more the reactive of that metal compound is where the difficulty the decomposition occur. Kwa hiyo kama ile compound of metal ipo ina involve the most reactive element kama hizo sodium na potassium, utaona kwamba ni difficult to break, to apply thermal condition there, and therefore ika decompose kwenda kutupatia the oxide of metal. Kwa hiyo utakuja kuona kwamba kila kwenye compound inakuwa na hizo expressionality kama tulivyoona kule kwenye sulfate the same. Kwa hiyo ukikutana na maswali, obviously will give the answer as no reaction, utakuwa upo sahihi kabisa. Na muda mwingine anakuleteaga haya ili akuchanganya, kwa sababu yeye anajua kabisa wewe unajua kwamba hii compound ikiundergo thermal decomposition inaenda kupata the oxide of metal and a certain product. Sasa yeye anakuletea the sodium carbonate. Sasa on your mind you have to recall, you have to know kwamba sodium carbonate it involve the most reactive metal, so this actually will be stable, so it is difficult to decompose on heating, therefore no reaction at all. So my student, that is all about what? About the issue of the thermal decomposition when we talk on the issue of the preparing those oxide of metals. So my student, sasa twende tukadiscuss the new aspect which is all about the chemical properties of the metal oxide. Tulisema kwamba vitu tutakavyoenda kufanyia coverage kwenye oxide of metal compound, tulisema kwamba one among is the classes of the metal oxide, lakini pia tutaangalia the method of the preparation of the metal oxide, and the third one is all about the chemical properties of metal oxide. The last one is the uses of the metal oxide. Sasa ukiangalia tushafanya coverage, tushakava vitu vingapi? Viwili. Tushakava kuhusiana na classes, tushakava kuhusiana na issue of the what? The methods of preparing those metal oxide. Lakini sasa tunaenda kufanya coverage ya another category which is all about the chemical properties. So here we are going to look on the different reactions, how do these metal oxide react to each other. That is all about the chemical properties of the metal oxide. So anasema kwamba metal oxide have many chemical properties. Sasa tunapokuja kuangalia hizi metal oxide, anasema kwamba zina many chemical properties. Anasema however in this section only the reaction of metal oxide with water and acid are described. Sasa tunapokuja kuangalia chemical properties, maana yake kwamba tunaangalia reaction mbalimbali za hizi metal oxide. Sasa hapa anatuambia kwamba hizi metal oxide zina reaction nyingi sana, lakini kwenye hii part au kwenye hii section, hii coverage, tunaenda kuangalia the reaction of the metal oxide between with water, lakini pia acid. Kwa hiyo tunaenda kuangalia the reaction with water but also the reaction with the acid. Only that we are going to cover here in the chemical properties of the what? Of the metal oxide. As long as anasema kwamba zipo nyingi sana, lakini tunaenda kuangalia kuhusiana na the aspect with water as well as acids. Water as well as acids. So now let us see the reaction of metal oxide with water. The reaction of metal oxide with water to form a basic solution. Kwamba this metal oxide react with water, therefore we are going to form the basic solution. Why we are going to form a basic solution? Because when this metal oxide is soluble in water, obvious we are going to get this basic solution. Anasema kwamba the oxide of the sodium, oxide of magnesium and calcium are soluble in water, as I told you. Kwamba tunapokuja kuangalia this oxide of magnesium, the oxide of sodium, oxide of calcium, these are soluble in water. So as long as this oxide of metal are soluble in water, therefore once they react with water, we are going to form directly the alkali solution or the basic solution. Anasema however magnesium oxide is only slightly soluble. Kwamba magnesium oxide peke yake ndo slightly soluble in water, lakini hiyo oxide of calcium and sodium are soluble in water. So if are soluble in water, we expect to form the alkali solution or the basic solution, which will be very stronger base or strong alkali. So my students, this is our first part of our discussion. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned so as we can proceed with our second part of our discussion.